Hey, it's Davis, and do you want to learn 5 questions that can absolutely make type 2 diabetes as easy as possible? Well, let's get right to it. Hey, it's D, and yes, this is Life Over Type 2, the channel completely dedicated on giving you really simple, easy to apply, easy to understand lifestyle strategies to really just make type 2 diabetes as easy as possible. And to show you what I mean, that's exactly what we're going to cover right now. Because right now we're going to cover the 5 biggest questions that really kind of changed everything, right? So if you've ever looked at people who've made a huge transformation in their life, what's weird about it is that a lot of times it's not typically like 10 pounds of crap in a 2-pound bag. It might end up, growing into something. However, a lot of times there's like some inner baseball, some like inside stuff that these people a lot of times aren't necessarily sharing. And so let me just kind of share with you what has really absolutely changed everything for me. And this goes beyond any sort of like diet thing, any sort of exercise thing. In fact, what you're about to learn, you can apply to any sort of, diet and or exercise to make it that much easier for you. And not only that, to see and be able to test and see, figure out if this is something that's really gonna last long term, or is it one of these things by all means, I don't want to give you anything that's hokey, that's only gonna last 5 days, 5 weeks, or 5 months, or even 5 years. What I really want to do is give you something that can absolutely serve you for the rest of your life. All right. So first, right now, what you're about to learn is kind of like this. Okay, it's literally the difference between giving, let's say you have 2 lumberjacks. Okay, one is out there swinging the same old axe over and over and over, breaking their back, not necessarily seeing themselves mess up all the time. Where this one over here, all you really do is have him simply sharpen their axe, not just 5 minutes in the morning and then a couple of times throughout the day. And the next thing you know, you've got 2 people, right? One over here breaking their back, failing over and over and over, while this one over here is doing it easier, working less, taking more breaks, and actually getting way more done with far less work and far less stress, okay? And that's exactly what the goal here. So first things first, number 1 is going to be, so whenever we look at whenever we want to make that first step, right? One of the first things that we ever want to look at is actually take a step back. Instead of jumping face first, right? Let's be a little bit pessimistic just for a split second and say, hey, look, real quick, what are the common mistakes? Okay, what are the common mistakes that everyone else is making right now that, whether they're a beginner or even on even at the higher end? Okay, and I'll give you a couple of quick examples. So this really kind of came together for me really when a buddy of mine was trying to do, intermittent fasting. And here's what was happening, okay? So he was introduced to intermittent fasting, doing a 16-8 or whatever. And the problem is that he was a gentleman that not only had 3 meals a day, he was used to snacking throughout the day, okay? So forcing himself to go 16 hours fasted was a pretty big stretch for him, right? Now, whenever he would force himself to do that, and whenever he actually made it, good on him, the problem is that his body was so used to eating all the time that by the time he would eat, he went from eating, almonds and sticks of celery or whatever that he was trying to eat when he was being healthy or whatever, to just gorging his face on fast food Chinese. And he would just get 1 entree. He'd get 2, two servings that normally help, feed 2 people, right? End up eating way more calories than he ever wanted and just going way off track, way off kilter. So yeah, he made the 16-8, but then in the end, it wasn't doing him any favors, okay? So here's basically what I mean by looking at that and really trying to address that. And if we can come up with ways to address that up front, right? It's a lot like having the answers to a test before walking in the room, okay? So perfect example is hey, this clicked for me when one day I literally went in to work one day and I wanted to do the same thing. I didn't want to go into the same thing that he was doing. So I noticed one day I was went into work, just started working whatever, and then it was 10 o'clock, and I'm like, hey, go ahead and have something, right? I looked at the clock and I noticed hey, wait, I didn't eat since 8 o'clock last night. I'm wait, 8 to 8 is 12 hours. It was 10 o'clock. I'm hey, wait, that's 14 hours, right? That's a 14-hour fast, right? That's a 14-10. And I was only really 2 hours off of a 16-8. Okay, now here's the deal. Instead of forcing myself the hard way, I was hey, what if I simply just asked myself for 15 minutes? Right? So 14 hours became 14 hours, 15 minutes, became 14 and a half hours, 15 hours, 16 hours. Next thing you know, I'm at 16, 18, 20, 22 hours simply by asking myself for a 15-minute window and letting my body slowly and gradually get into that pace at its own pace. That way the stress is 100% off my shoulders. an 18-hour fast or a 16-hour fast, pushing yourself that much farther is a lot harder than asking ourselves for 15 minutes. Okay, and then we all know, slow and steady wins the race. And not only that, it's a lot easier to make that part of our daily regimen when we're not forcing ourselves to do something that we wouldn't normally do. And number 2 is going to be, what's the fastest, easiest, and most effective way of getting a particular result? Okay, so this really kind of dawned on me when I bought this book called The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. Okay, it's a big book on everything from fat loss, muscle gain, sex, sleep, rehabbing old sports injuries. It has a huge legion of fans on Amazon and New York Times, right? Huge New York Times bestseller, and there's no real big voodoo about the book. At the end of the day, it's really just the author going to different experts around the world on these subjects, and he asks them very simple yet focused questions. Okay, questions like, what do you do? How do you do it? And if a regular person off the street wants to get the same results, what's the fastest, easiest, and most effective way of doing that? Okay? And at the end of the day, that book is really him journaling through all that stuff, so you see his ups and his downs and all that other stuff in between. Now, here's where things get really cool, okay? When I started to do these different diets, so to put things in perspective, when I was first diagnosed, I went vegan, then I went slow carb, then I went paleo, then I did keto for about 2.5, close to 3 years, right? And then I did zero carb, and at the end of the day, I wanted to be myself, and I was chasing all these different diets to help me control my blood sugar, when at the end of the day, I never really took 30 seconds to stop and then tip myself and see what foods were actually doing what, right? And the next thing you know, just with a couple of minutes of actual just seeing what the answers were, I didn't have to it kind of freed me from doing all these other hoops that all these different diets had me going through. Why? Because before I knew it, I knew what foods worked for me. I knew what foods wouldn't spike my blood sugar, spike it very little, or even more importantly, help me drive it down. So let's say if I was being quote unquote normal, which I'm a total human being, I'm far from perfect. And if I simply knew and know now what foods easily help me drive my blood sugar down, well, I don't have to necessarily be so paranoid anymore, and I don't have to jump and ride that hamster wheel anymore. Okay, that would be number 2. Number 3 is the same variant. Okay, so number 2 is obviously what's the fastest, easiest, most effective way to test something, right? To see if something works, or what's the fastest, easiest, and effective way to get a particular result. Okay, and obviously, perfect example there is by if we want to do a way of eating that allows us to be ourselves and also allows us to control our blood sugar. Well, probably want to look directly at our blood sugar. Okay, so again, now number 3 is going to be just one little step beyond that. Okay, so for example, what's the fastest, easiest, and most effective way to now get repeatable results? Okay, repeatable results. And here's an easy way of doing it. I'll tell you right now. Okay, as we start to eat, as we start to learn, what works for our body, or even if we don't want to necessarily look, at a number or whatever, let's say we're a little bit, just apprehensive, right? We don't feel comfortable at looking at our numbers first, right? Obviously, whether it's the diet plan that your doctor gives you, or whatever it is, by all means, we can always just start with foods that we already love, right? That are on that particular list. Okay, so perfect example, protein burgers, right? Nobody has to sell me hard on eating a protein burger, right? Or we love this barbecue place. Nobody has to sell me hard on having a salad with my favorite barbecue on top, right? Obviously, don't want the dressings or the sauces or whatever. But any good smokehouse doesn't douse everything with barbecue sauce anyway, right? Another perfect example, I love Mexican food, right? Get those street tacos, right? Just don't eat the tortillas and eat everything else. Super, super simple. When we look at the ingredients, we'll basically find those on basically almost any diet that are not only proven to help type 2 diabetics, we can also be ourselves while eating out and get repeatable results. Why? Because if we're going to go out and eat that food anyway, we might as well start there, right? Start there. And so the easiest way I can put that to you is if you want to look at all these other people doing these different diets, whether they last 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, or even 5 years, just for people to get tired of it, okay? A huge part of the reason why is because we're eating one way, and then all of a sudden the diet is we're going to eat the exact opposite way, right? And then next thing you know, I know I'm totally guilty of it. We totally beat our chest yes, this is the right way. We're going to do this or whatever, right? Next thing you know, we're completely ignoring how we've normally eaten for like only Lord knows how many years, right? And then when it blows up in our face and our body's just finally like, dude, like you can only ignore what you love for so long. No wonder why so many times it just kind of like, blows up in our face and it doesn't necessarily work out, right? Well, now, by simply starting with what we already love, that's an easy way of getting repeatable results, right? So while everyone else is literally out there struggling, within 5 minutes, right, we can literally look at like an ingredient list, whether it's whether it's one that your doctor gave you. If you want, an ingredient list that I work off of, I'll give it to you for free. I'm not giving you any dietary advice, keep in mind. But yeah, you can get that for free at lifeovertype2.com, okay? Now, here's gonna be number 4. What's the fastest, easiest, and most effective way, okay, to test this out, to try it, right? The real secret, more than anything, is to treat everything kind of like a buffet, right? And here's what I mean, okay? So everything, if you ever find anyone who's ever really like turned their life around, it's not usually 10 pounds of crap in a 2-pound bag that they started with, right? They typically started with something small and then it naturally grew, right? All we're really gonna do is essentially do the same thing, right? So we'll take something small and something easy to test. So for example, if you want to try eating more and more cleaner and whole foods, right? Perfect examples. Let's start with what we already like just from the last example, right? So for example, I like beef. I like, I got to eat my veggies or whatever. Cool. A protein burger, right? Or, I like tacos, right? So cool. I can go ahead and have, beef and then obviously like guacamole, cheese, sour cream, right? Salsa, whatever on top, right? Obviously want to watch out too much on the salsa. But yeah, at the same time, like no big deal. Like that's not a lot of hard work, right? And the faster we can test that, the faster we can play with that, is the faster we can stop and ask ourselves 2 really simple questions. 1, do I enjoy this up front, right? Because if I don't enjoy it up front, if we force ourselves to do something that we don't like, it's probably not going to work out, okay? I just want to help you take that pressure off your shoulders, okay? So like, if you're anything like me, and you're like, New Year's resolution, and then it doesn't stick. Like you make it on January, and then by March, it's like a thing of the past. Like it's like it never even happened. It's like a fart in the wind. Like no big deal, whatever, right? The easiest way to stop playing that is we can now stop and say, hey, look, like, do I really enjoy this? Do I really enjoy this? And do I see myself doing it every day, right? The second we can answer that question, we can now say, hey, do I see myself doing this for a long time, right? Because I sincerely believe as a type 2 diabetic, nobody deserves the right to ever waste our time, okay? And I'm just being super honest, okay? So if we can see ourselves, hey, I can eat Chinese food, right? I can eat drive-through burgers. I can eat Mexican food, right? When I say Chinese food, super simple, right? Ask the chef, do you guys use, fillers or starch or whatever, in your soups or whatever? Cool. I'm saying this because it's like wintertime as I'm recording this for you, right? No problem. Cool. Perfect. Give me a wonton soup, no wontons, extra protein. Like that simple, right? Like one word, okay? Like if you want to see how I actually lost weight eating Chinese food, I'll go ahead and put the link in the video below, okay? So yeah, super simple, right? What are ways that can easily test this, right? So, and then ask myself, once I test it, let me ask myself 2 quick questions. Number 1, do I enjoy this right now? Okay? Do I enjoy this right now? So if you want to look at everyone else making these similar mistakes, and I was guilty of it too forever, okay, versus the people that make it look easy, it's as simple as making that decision of taking the easier route, okay? Simply like making the decision of, do you want to be the lumberjack that's swinging the same old dull axe every year? Or do you want to be the person that can literally just take 5 minutes to sharpen the axe and then maybe just a couple of 5 minutes throughout the day to keep it sharp? That way you're not only taking more breaks, you're getting a lot more done with a lot less work. Okay, there. And now, so number 5 is going to be, do I see myself, doing this forever, which is really kind of like, an extension of number 4. So the credit for this actually goes to a guy by the name of Peter Thiel, okay? And basically, he was one of the founders of, I think it was like either PayPal or eBay. And essentially, one of the things that they asked him, how are you able to grow so fast or whatever? It was very simple. It's focus. And they're like, okay, well, that sounds kind of simple. However, like, what exactly are you doing? And he was like, yeah, very simple. Here we go, okay? So simply ask myself, if I were to draw a vision in my head, okay, of me being the healthiest, happiest possible version of myself as a type 2 diabetic, right? Hey, what would that look like, right? Let me just go ahead and imagine that right now. So I'll tell you right now what that looks like. Sure, I will go ahead and the food that I eat is going to, be food that I already love. It's going to be healthy, right? I'm going to have this whole new lease on life, right? I'm going to start, exercising more and more, and I can see myself being happy, right? Super simple. And the easiest way to do that now is to say, okay, do that now. It's like, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like what? Well, that sounds like so far-fetched, right? But in the same breath, if anything that we had covered actually made any sense, that's exactly how it was done, right? So for example, what if I started with eating foods that I already love that serve my purpose, right? Help me not only lose weight, but also help me control my blood sugar, which is why I gave you the hamburger, the taco, and the Chinese food examples, right? Because that is literally where I started, right? So now, not only was I able to easily control my blood sugar, I was doing it with foods that I was going to eat anyway. Like nobody had to sell me on eating drive-through food and foods that I already loved, right? And the beautiful thing about that is whenever people were asking me like, wow, like how do you make it look so easy or whatever? It's like a 5-minute thing. And to be totally honest, it's like not even 5 minutes, right? So like, it's like not even a minute, right? So like, for example, going to the Chinese place, give me a wonton soup, extra protein, no wontons, right? Or even asking them, hey, I need you to make me something fresh. I'll go ahead and have, fish, chicken, beef, whatever it is, and all these different proteins. Don't ever be surprised if all of a sudden the owner gets involved and starts making you all these one-off dishes, and then people start asking for the same thing that you had, like, yo, I want what he's having. Why? Because it's fresh, it's made just for you, it's not held together with like all that wallpaper paste, right? Because it's also fresh and because it doesn't have all the extra grease and all the extra fried noodles and stuff, you're probably cutting anywhere from like 700 to 800 to 1500 calories, especially when you grab a measuring cup and you actually look at like a food app and you're like, whoa, right? Like super, super simple, so bloody powerful. You're cutting all these calories. No extra work. It's not hard eating, Chinese food, right? The other part of that is like, when we stop and ask that, like ourselves, those 5-minute questions, right? And like I said, like it doesn't even take like 5 minutes. For example, what are foods that I already love that happen to work well with my blood sugar, right? Like taking it all the way back to like, step number 1 and number 2. It's like, okay, cool. Let's say I go over to Fat Burger, right? And I want to eat like I'm at the county fair, right? Because one of the things that sucks about type 2 diabetes is that at least I know for me that it took away my innocence. You know what I mean? It kind of like ripped that out of my hands to where I was always like beating my chest, like diet after diet after diet, thinking that I needed to be some person when I really just wanted to be myself because I felt like type 2 took that from me, right? And I say that because regardless of how much, weight I had lost or whatever, I'm maybe like, 105, 110 pounds down right now. I'd be lying through my teeth if I didn't admit to you that I still love to eat like I'm at the county fair, So perfect example, if I go to like, Fat Burger or whatever, well, there's not one by my house, but there used to be, I can literally look at the menu and be like, okay, I can't have the bun, I can't have the ketchup, and I can just read off all the condiments, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. Give me another patty, give me some more cheese, give me, full fat ranch dressing, give me blue cheese crumbles, give me sauteed mushrooms, it's Fat Burger, right? Give me an egg, give me guacamole, give me some bacon, give me one of the deli meats. I mean, like, what is that, like 9? You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's definitely more to it, right? But like, give me another one of the spicy mustards or another one of the sauces. I mean, that's at least like 10. I got rid of 2 and I got 10, right? Like, no big deal. So that, more than anything, are going to be the 5 biggest mental shifts, okay? If you want to go out and look at, folks, and I only say this not by looking down on anyone because I was this guy for years, making the same continual mistakes over and over and over, okay? You want to be able to like snap that, right? Like you maybe heard of the Albert Einstein quote saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting results, right? Like this is hands down one of the easiest ways to shortcut that success, okay? So yeah, it's just simply by making the decision of like not doing the same thing again, right? So anyways, I absolutely hope that serves you well, and yeah, I'll definitely see you in the next one. Cheers.